Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. I am still pregnant. I wanted to kind of record our fertility journey for anyone that's interested. I know that when we started going through infertility treatments, I struggled to really find people that understood. I ended up on Instagram with a fertility specific account, and I met a lot of people through Instagram, and that really helped me feel like I wasn't alone because it can be so lonely. This is our third baby that we've conceived through IVF. It was a very long journey, a 4-year journey with, I'll go through it all, but like multiple egg retrievals, multiple miscarriages. We ended up at a different clinic, and we have been extremely lucky to have conceived through IVF our twins and then this baby. And even though I have everything written down because it was a long journey, even though this journey was so difficult and took so long, I really consider us blessed and lucky because fertility treatments do not guarantee a baby. There's a lot of people that go through fertility treatments, they don't get a baby at the end. So all the emotional pain, the financial burden, because we did not have insurance coverage in the beginning, the toll that it takes on your self, your mental health, your relationships, all of that was worth it. And I really feel like we're blessed because I do know that it doesn't end this way for everybody. So I just wanted to kind of go through what we went through and then just reach out to everybody and just say, if you need someone, I'm here. I can give you my fertility Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram at Megan R. McLean, and you can always message me there. You can comment. I have a lot of knowledge. I've been through a lot of different protocols, and I am always willing to help people. And you wouldn't believe how many people have reached out to me already. Friends, acquaintances, people I've run into through work, just saying, hey, I'm going through IVF and I know that you're very open about it. Can I ask you questions? 100%. And I want to be your cheerleader and I want to be there for you. I know how hard it can be to be in the thick of it, especially when you're in the middle of it and people have comments or that aren't as nice, or pregnancy announcements that you're dealing with and all that. When I was in the middle of IVF, I got a couple comments that have stuck with me, and I just want to say, be careful what you say to people because you just don't know what they're going through. Don't ask people when they're having kids because that could be really hard on their heart because they're going through all this. I'll share a couple of things that happened to me. The first one was I worked in a nursing home as a therapist, and I was at the nurse's station, and one of the nurses actually said it was Infertility Awareness Week and Good Morning America was on, and there was a bunch of, we call them infertility warriors, that had conceived their kids either through adoption, surrogacy, or IVF. And she looked at me, not knowing what I had been through. Was not open about my journey at that point. She goes, I cannot believe how selfish these people are. All these kids that need adopted, and some of them had adopted, but she's like, I cannot believe that they spend all this money on IVF. Maybe it's God's way of telling them that they shouldn't have kids. And I look back on that and think how, as much as that stuck with me, I'm trying to think she just didn't know, because the same person has reached out to me and said, I'm considering IVF. Can I talk to you? So honestly, I didn't mention to her that comment really stuck with me. My point is, people just don't understand it until they've been in those shoes. And so I just urge you to be careful with your comments. Everybody chooses their own journey. Adoption is hard too, guys. So we looked into adoption, and it is expensive, hard. It is not an easy journey either, and God bless the people that do it. We would love to adopt in the future. I don't know what our future holds. So just don't say to people, why are you doing IVF? You should be adopting, because you just don't know their situation. For me, it was a very strong urge to have my own genetic children, to carry them, all that stuff. So you just don't know what people are going through until you've been in their shoes, and your comments are better left to yourself, unless it's, how can I help you? Is there something I can do? Do you need to talk? How can I support you? Those are the kind of comments that are needed, not, when are you having kids? It's time to add another kid. You should just adopt. I can't believe how selfish you are. Those comments have no place in the fertility community. It's very hard. You don't know until you go through it. And I think some celebrities give IVF a bad name because they're doing it for the wrong reasons. I know Paris Hilton came out that she really wants twins and she wants boy-girl twins, and that's why she's doing it. you know, it gives it a bad name, but there are people that this is the way that they need to conceive children, and that's their life. And I just urge you to be careful and reach out to your friends and just say, how can I help you? Instead of judging them, because you just don't know. One of the other things that happened to me is I was going through fertility treatments. People knew about it at my job, and my boss thought it would be a great idea to surprise me with an ultrasound and then joke about how it was his 15-year-old son, which it was. It really was his 15-year-old son, and his girlfriend was pregnant. But I don't feel like he approached it in the correct way, which I, had guarded my heart, and I'm a little more, not as sensitive to it. And I was kind of just like, oh, he didn't know, he was trying to be nice and tell me before I heard it from someone else. But he was just like joking about his fertile son, like proud of his 15-year-old son for having a baby when I couldn't get pregnant. It was the way he approached it, which is not his fault. It was more me, but just certain things to just keep in mind, and just be gentle with your friends going through fertility, and just remember that it doesn't always work for everyone. So just because they're going through it doesn't mean they're going to get a baby, and it's going to be hard, and there's going to be heartache. So I'm going to kind of skim through my journey, what we did. So we started in October of 2015. We moved into my mother-in-law's basement apartment to pay off my student loans, and then found out that we were going to need fertility help. I had gone to my OB and was like, we've been trying for like 6 months, and you do not have to wait a year. So advocate for yourself. Advocate for yourself. If it's been 6 months or you feel like something's wrong, advocate for tests. If they say you need to wait a year, you may need to find somebody else. Just advocate for yourself. So my husband had gotten a semen analysis, and his sperm were fine, but there wasn't as many, and they weren't swimming as well. And my doctor said to me, oh, you will get pregnant with IUIs. I wish these doctors were a little more realistic. But we did our first IUI in 2015, and it was canceled because I ovulated early. We went back in November and December and did IUIs, and they both failed. So then in January of 2016, I went to the fertility clinic because my OB said to me, oh my gosh, you guys will be so easy. It's just, you don't have a sperm problem. You just have less sperm. They're not swimming as well. You will be so easy. Promise. It'll be easy peasy for you. They'll love you there. So I had my consult with her in January, and we also tried another IUI with my OB, and it was canceled because I had free fluid around one of the follicles. Then in March, we had our last IUI that failed, and I started birth control for my first IVF cycle. In May of 2016, we had our first egg retrieval, and I will just go through these really quick. I don't think the details are that important. We had 10 eggs, 5 were fertilized, transferred 2, froze 1, and it failed. So we went right into another egg retrieval in June. We had 21 eggs, 10 fertilized, transferred 2, froze 5, and that failed. Now, this whole time, the doctor had told us at our appointment that this would be easy. So then in July, I had a hysteroscopy and an endometrial biopsy, and those were normal. So in September, we decided to do another egg retrieval. We had done a package where it was basically you do 2 egg retrievals, and if you're not pregnant, your 3rd egg retrieval is free. So that's why we ended up just going right into a 3rd one. We had 15 eggs, 7 fertilized. We transferred 2 again, and that also failed. So then in October, I had an ERA biopsy, which basically tells you how receptive you are to the progesterone and getting pregnant. And it said that I needed a little bit extra progesterone earlier. So then we took a couple months off, and in January of 2017 did our first frozen transfer. We did 2 embryos, and my first beta HCG was 162. So we were finally pregnant. We were so excited. 2 days later, when I got my second beta HCG, it hadn't quite doubled, and the doctor was like, we'll see what happens. I automatically felt dread. I remember texting my dad, and he was like, it's going to be fine. And I remember being like, I don't have a good feeling. Don't get excited. Turns out it was a very slow rising beta. It was what in the infertility community we call beta hell. slow rising. It ended up dropping a little. It wasn't viable, and I had to take a drug, misoprostol, to induce a miscarriage. So then we took a month or two off, and in March we did our second frozen embryo transfer with 2 embryos that failed. In April, I had a repeat hysteroscopy, which was normal. In May, we did our third frozen transfer with 2 embryos. I had a very low beta. I want to say it was like 98. They want to see it over 100, so they were still hopeful, but the second one had dropped. So it was basically a chemical, which the negative of fertility treatments is, where if I had gotten pregnant naturally, I probably wouldn't have known because I just would have gotten my period maybe a day or 2 late, but I knew. It just makes it hard. So then took a couple months off, and in August we decided to do another egg retrieval, and we were sending our embryos for genetic testing. So the doctor had basically said, I don't understand why this is happening. I wonder if your embryos aren't genetically normal. So in that retrieval, we got 15 eggs, 11 embryos, and between these embryos and from our various other transfers, they were able to take 10 of the embryos were able to be biopsied for PGS, which is the genetic testing. So they did unfreeze a couple of the ones that were already frozen and then took samples from these. So we ended up having 10 being sent off. And I remember we were on a vacation. We got the call that we had 8 normal embryos, which is insane out of 10. So basically the doctor was like, nope, that's not the issue. Let's just try again. At this point, I should have known that we shouldn't have just tried again. But that was August. We took some time off. In November, we did our 4th frozen embryo transfer with 2 embryos again, and my beta HCG was like 48. So it ended up being another chemical. So that was in November of 2017. And finally in December, we had sat down with our reproductive endocrinologist, and she was basically like, let's try again. I have no idea, because the sperm is not an issue once you have these great embryos. They're normal. I have no idea why it's not working. Let's just try again. And my husband and I were like, we're done. We're not going to try the same thing again that hasn't worked tons of times before. So we switched clinics, which required us to, when we decided on, we consulted with the new clinic. I actually saw a doctor kind of far away that specialized in recurrent miscarriages, which is kind of what I was thinking because I had gotten pregnant a bunch of times, but it just didn't stick. He was super, super confident that if we think outside of the box and change my protocol up, that it would work. He didn't see a problem. So again, I went in with a little bit like, I had been told by my OB and my first reproductive endocrinologist that we would be so easy, no problems. And I was a little bit frustrated that this doctor felt the same way, like, oh, think outside the box. We're going to do a new protocol. He wanted to do a mini IVF, which if you know anything about IVF, the mini IVF is more of a natural cycle where you take low doses of the same drugs you do for an egg retrieval to create a follicle. And then when your follicle is ready to ovulate, you take a trigger shot, which forces your body to ovulate. And at the same time as that egg would be implanting, you have the transfer of the embryo. So it's kind of like tricking your body into thinking that the egg you're ovulating is going to be the one implanting, but it's actually the embryo. So it follows your natural progression, which makes total sense to me. Why would you not follow your body's natural progression? Where the other protocol I was doing, I was taking drugs to halt ovulation so that they could put the embryo in. I was willing to try this new protocol, but he was so confident that I was a little bit like nervous because I had already seen all these super confident doctors and it hadn't worked. And I was a little bit like excited, but also wanted to roll my eyes and be like, don't give me false hope. But this was going to be our last clinic. So we transferred our embryos, which is a process. You have to call a company, you have to pay them to pick up your embryos in this special nitrogen temperature pressurized container and drop it off at the new clinic. It's not cheap, but we did it. And then in February of 2018, he found out that I had a MTHFR mutation, which I had actually done a ton of research, and I had asked my first reproductive endocrinologist to run a recurrent miscarriage panel, which tested for blood clotting disorders, this MTHFR mutation, and a bunch of other things. And she was, natural killer cells. And she was like, I don't believe in that stuff. I don't think that that's actually true that that affects anything, so she didn't want to do it. He immediately ran those tests and basically said that my body doesn't process folic acid and I needed methylfolate. So he put me on a methylfolate. It wasn't a prescription, I just had to buy it. And then we tried the new protocol. So in March 2018, it was our 5th frozen transfer, our 8th overall transfer. We put in 2 embryos again because we were kind of like, we'll put in 2. We put in 2 all along. It will increase our chances. And it actually worked. We got pregnant with our twins. They were due in December. We had them in October at 33 weeks. They were in the NICU. At some point, I will post their video of their birth story, but came home after 21 days and they are now 2.5 and perfectly great. So I couldn't even believe it. Our first beta HCG was like 367. I was like, holy crap, this worked. The next one was like in the thousands. So I couldn't even believe it. His protocol worked, you know, the first time. I could not even believe it. So then here we are. We went back in August of 2020 and did a frozen transfer. We did 1 embryo this time. I took the same methylfolate, the same prenatal, and we did the exact same protocol we did last time. And here I am thinking the twins were possibly a fluke. It had failed. We had failed 7 transfers. It took us a long time to get there. Maybe that was a fluke. I don't know. He did the same protocol. We got pregnant. My first beta was 164, which the very first time I got pregnant was 162. So I was a little bit nervous. But then the second one obviously doubled perfectly fine. It was like 488. And here we are. We are due in May, but probably any day now if you watch my 36-week update. And that is kind of where we are. So that was our journey. We have 3 embryos left that are frozen. And we're kind of in the, we're not sure what we want to do. We definitely want to try for 1 more. Again, these 2 could have been a fluke because fertility treatments are not a guarantee. And the next one could not work, but we're just, you know, we're confident in his protocol. So we'll try for 1 more and see what happens. And if we get pregnant, we'll have to decide what to do with our last embryos. But that is kind of our fertility journey. And I just wanted to put it out there because it was not an easy journey. It was emotionally taxing. It cost a lot of money. It's something we really had to decide we wanted to do and decide how far we were really going to go. And I just kind of want to remind people again to be sensitive, and you know, it's very difficult. And if you're struggling, there's a huge fertility community on Instagram, which is fantastic. And on top of that, there's lots of YouTubers that have gone through it that I now subscribe to. And it is a journey. So if you ever have any questions, want to reach out, need some support, you can find me on Instagram. Like I said, Megan R. McLean. I'm totally open about our journey and what we went through. And I totally don't care what other people say. This is how we became parents and this is our story. So I hope everyone's having a great day and I will see you soon.